Hello everybody, it's Eziomonte117 here. And sorry if I've been away for a while. I've been working with school, and I haven't really had the best. I've never really been the best in the last 3 months or so. I've been struggling with a lot of things, but nonetheless, I'm finally back to bring you guys a video on an album. And I know I always do album reviews, but I'll try my best to keep things fresh by varying the videos a bit in the upcoming future. But today's album we're going to talk about is by a particular from a particular progressive metal band, a band that we all know as the Fantastic Instrumentalists, and including the horrible vocalist. I know many people don't say that, but that's why I like to quote them. Today we are going to talk about Distance Over Time by Dream Theater. As you can tell by my description of the band, my relationship with Dream Theater has been complicated. I definitely do admire the members of this band, and I do think they are incredibly talented, especially John Petrucci and John Myung. But at the same time, I find their music incredibly soulless and incredibly lacking in most aspects, like feel and charm and charisma. Also, I feel like a lot of their songs can be way too overlong, way too dependent on fast solos and long instrumental sections which go nowhere. And they have probably some of the most annoying vocalists in the music industry today with James LaBrie. So I came into this album being rather skeptical, as I thought their last two albums, The Astonishing and their self-titled, were pretty eh. And I didn't think A Dramatic Turn of Events was like a masterpiece either. So, what did I think of the album as I've now listened to it a few times? Well, it's actually not that bad. Now look, I'm not saying that this album is like a masterpiece or something. It still has its flaws, and some of them are really, really huge. But when it comes to modern Dream Theater, this is probably one of their better releases. So yeah, I can say that I actually like a modern Dream Theater release for once. Who would have known? Alright, so the songs. The album starts off with the first single that was released for the album with Untempered Angel. Starts with an acoustic intro that is, usual Dream Theater shenanigans. And that's exactly what the song is. Usual Dream Theater shenanigans. You have your heavy intro, and then going into like a verse, chorus, until you go into an instrumental section with a guitar solo and sim solo, and then ending the song with the chorus and another riff that we haven't heard before. It's pretty formulaic, and the song itself doesn't offer anything interesting to the Dream Theater repertoire. The vocals are also pretty annoying, as they're covered up in effects and autotune, which can be really distracting. Nonetheless, there are some cool riffs here, and the guitar solo is pretty neat. Still, this is definitely one of the weaker songs on the album, and it could have been better, especially for being the first single. Then we move on to the third single that was released for the album with Paralyze, and I really like this one. It's got a sick opening riff that is really reminiscent of Breaking Benjamin. And yes, that may sound bad, but believe me, the rest of the song isn't like Breaking Benjamin. It's only in the performance of the riffs. The rest of the song it's pretty straightforward, but it managed to be really catchy. There's a really cool Middle Eastern guitar solo, and the vocals are in fine form here. But yeah, I really like this track. Many people seem to hate this one because it's them going alternative or metal or something, and it sounds like Breaking Benjamin or whatever. But I found myself really liking this, and it's definitely one of the better songs on the album. Now we get the second single of the album with Fall Into the Light, and it's okay. It starts up pretty well. The first few minutes are pretty neat. You get some pretty cool Megadeth-inspired riffs, and the verses are not too bad. The chorus is pretty neat, but then it goes into this middle section that drags. It tries to recall back to like Black Clouds and Silver Linings, which makes me think, well, I should rather just be listening to that instead. There's a lot of choppy transitions, and the song itself just kind of goes with that formulaic structure of having a guitar solo and then a sim solo, and yeah, it starts to get boring after a while. The song starts out really well and ends not too badly either. Still, the song could have been way better in my opinion, but nonetheless, it's not a bad track for what it is. Then we get into what I think is a really cool track with Barstow Warrior. This is definitely the most Dream Theater-like track on the album. This sounds a lot like Images and Words or their first album, really Rush-inspired. Starts with a pretty cool arpeggio in The Sims, which reminds me a lot of King Crimson's Frame by Frame. I know it's a weird comparison going from Rush to King Crimson, but whatever. I really like the guitar solos throughout. The vocals are okay. They're not as good as they were on Paralyze, but they're not awful. There's some pretty cool piano touches, which adds to the dynamics of the song. The bass work is pretty tight. I can't argue with this one. This is a pretty dope track, and definitely one of the highlights of the album. Oh, they had to fuck it up, didn't they? Room 137. Jesus Christ, this song is garbage. The main riff is pretty standard, the structure is pretty standard, there's some terrible vocals throughout, there's always attempts at going psychedelic with all the voice effects near the end, which is so forced. There's an awful guitar solo, which one, sounds out of two resorts to the usual playing fast and not having any sort of inspiration or feel, and three, has no relevance to the rest of the song. Room 137 is just an awful track and definitely the weakest song on the album in my opinion. But we get what I think is by far the best track on the album with S2N, or Signal to Noise. Starting with a pretty dope bass intro by John Myung, it leads into some really Rush-inspired riff exchanges, and then going into some not so bad vocals by Labrie. They're a bit forced, but they really come together in the chorus. There's a lot of technical solos throughout and riffs, and tons of different ideas they throw around. And also the icing on the cake on this song is the Owen Wilson sample at 6 minutes in. Jesus Christ, it shows that these guys actually do have a sense of humor. So yeah, I really dig this track. Everyone's on top form here. The solos, like I said, are fantastic, and it has a really strong chorus. Definitely the best track on the album. Then we get another good track with At Wit's End. The riffs on this song are by far the best on the album. There's at least 10 riffs in this I can say are fantastic. The vocals aren't too bad either, and even in the chorus where the lyrics and the execution of it all is ridiculous, he manages to sing his heart out with the material given to him, and he does pretty well. There's a fantastic guitar solo near the end of the song. Again, the dynamics here are fully realized, the synth work is tight. My only complaint would be the transition near the end of the song, where the song just fades out and then goes into this little coda that has that post-rock vibe. They go full on Godspeed You Black Emperor near the end of the song, and I'm like, that's unexpected. Nonetheless, this song is fantastic and probably the second best on the album, for sure. Oh my god, they had to mess it up again with Out of Reach. It's the obligatory ballad, and it is corny. It sounds like an adult contemporary ballad by Michael Bolt or something. There's always trying to be feel-see guitars that are so forced. The vocals are really breathy and annoying, and the song has a pretty standard structure. There's nothing interesting going on in the song, and the lyrics are also pretty fucking terrible. So yeah, I have nothing to say about this song. It is trash and definitely the second weakest song on the album. The album then ends with Pale Blue Dot. You would think from the quality of At Wit's End and S2N, the other big epics, that this one would also be just as good. Sadly, it doesn't quite live up. It has a pretty neat intro where it kind of feels like you're in a concept album or something. And there's some pretty cool djenty riffs throughout, which is also something these guys haven't really done often, that is djent. But they managed to do it pretty well. The problem I have with the song is that, just like Room 147, it goes into some really unnecessary, wanky instrumental sections that go on for way too long and serve no purpose. The song ends pretty well, but you have to go for some long instrumental bits that are just not that exciting. Nonetheless, it's not a bad closer, but it could have been a tiny bit better. So final thoughts on Distance Over Time. It's definitely a huge improvement over the last three albums. and at least while I do think the highlights and the dramatic turn of events are better, like Breaking Illusions is the best song that Modern Dream Theater has made. This album is consistency wise their best album in quite some time. I do have my gripes with it. The vocals can get really annoying at times, especially on stuff like Room 147, Out of Reach, Barstow Warrior, and Untempered Angel. I forgot to mention one thing. It's not a negative as such, but Mike Mangini, you know, like one of the weaker parts of Modern Dream Theater, manages to contribute something to this album. He does some pretty cool drum fills throughout the album, but that's also sort of a negative as he still sounds robotic as ever, and I do not like his drum sound that much. But nonetheless, he does put on a much better performance here than he usually does. Then we get back to the actual negatives. The production is a bit on the clean side. I mean, it's definitely heavier than the last two albums, but again, just the heavy amount of autotune on the vocals and the fact that sometimes the guitars can get way too distant and the bass work doesn't, even though it's definitely more present here than on previous albums, I still don't think it gets enough attention compared to, let's say, the first 3 albums by the band, which are When the Dream They Unite, Images and Words, and Awake, which was where we got to hear John Myung at his finest. And there are some gratuitous instrumental sections, but nonetheless, there are some fantastic songs throughout with stuff like Barstow Warrior, S2N, and At Wit's End. There's also some good songs too with Pale Blue Dot and Paralyze. It also has its fair share of filler, as some of it is really bad, like Room 137 and Out of Reach. But nonetheless, I liked what I've heard here, and it's definitely a solid album. It's just not, it's just not as good as their classic stuff. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the review, and I'll see you next time.